Very cool. Thank you, guys. It's good to be wrapping up this series. We are glad that you've came and hope that it's been helpful for you. We'll have a little more info as we wrap up, kind of about next steps and where to go from here. But if you really like this material, there are more opportunities to learn more. So we do encourage you to kind of keep that in mind, to keep the learning going. And so this is our last session. So quick hand, by a show of hands, who has been here? Let me do it this way. If you've not been here previously to tonight, raise your hand. All right, we got veterans here. Okay, so I'll make the intro pretty short if we'll go to the next slide. So really what we wanted to do is just present this series on this model called restoration therapy that we use a lot. So this entire class series has been based on this model that really looks at the idea of how we can find peace, right? In order to get to peace, sometimes we have to work through some pain. So a big part of this model, as we kick things off, just talked about in marriage, one of our primary goals is to create this shared vision of a life together, right? That we create usness. And in usness, it takes the best parts of who we both are, but there's something unique that really happens when we are living this kind of committed, yielded, submissive relationship to each other, right? And so that was really the foundation of the class. We have to step outside of ourselves to really form this unique bond with our mate. And then we really spent a couple of weeks in diving into that pain cycle. You know, the pain that we all experience as we're born in a broken, fallen world, and really becoming self-aware. When I'm triggered, what's happening to me physically, emotionally, psychologically when I'm in pain? And what are the predictable ways that I cope with pain that tend to create more problems for myself and my relationship? Then the last couple of weeks, we've reviewed the peace cycle. How can we understand that peace is something that we get to regulate? I get to determine the degree to which I can have peace. And that is such an empowering idea, that peace doesn't have to be something external to me. It doesn't have to be my circumstances that give me peace, right? This is something that I can choose with God's help. And then when I am connected to God, when I'm operating out of my own sense of peace and love and value, what can I do then? I get to pursue connection in my relationships. So that's kind of the cliff notes of what we've been studying. And so we'll go on here. One of the things that this model really emphasizes is this idea of doing our 4 steps. So, before we go to okay, there it is. I was going to say, do we know what our 4 steps are? All right, repeat after me, because this is good. We need to like really implant in our brain the 4 steps. Say what you feel. Everybody repeat after me. Say what you feel, okay? So we have to be self-aware. What am I actually dealing with? What are my core emotions? What are my core self-beliefs when I'm in pain? We have to actually verbally say what I feel, right? So mapping out that pain cycle. And then when we say what we feel, we have to then do what? Say what we normally do, right? We got to say what we do. We have to build that connection between when I feel this way, I act this way, right? And so what we said is when most of us are in our pain cycle, kind of the core internal experiences, we do what? We blame others or shame self. And then what do we do in our actions? We can the fight or flight kicks in, and we usually either try to solve problems, get in sort of controlling behaviors to resolve the issue, or we do what? Let's bail out. Let's internalize. Let's avoid. Let's flight. So neither of those are good for our marriage, right? It's not good for our own well-being. It's certainly not good for our relationships when we're either shaming and blaming or attacking or withdrawing. So how do we solve it, guys? How do we bring peace into our lives? We just got to get our partner to change their behavior, right? That's what we've learned over the last. No, we don't try to focus on our spouse's bad behavior and then get them to do something different, do we? We change by doing what? We say the truth. Say the truth. That's right. And so your grounding statements of truth need to be unique and specific to you. You know, Scripture is full of God's promises to us about our identity, our value. And there's something magical that happens. I think it's the Holy Spirit. That when we're saying the truth out loud through the Holy Spirit, we're rewiring our brain, we're calming our body and our emotions, and then out of that connectedness, that groundedness with God and self, then what happens? Say what we'll do differently, right? And so one of the things, and I think Lauren we'll reinforce this at the end. We've got to practice this regularly. We can't just think about it. We literally have to make this a discipline. Just like if you're doing a lifestyle change of changing your eating habits or going to the gym, what do you have to do? Consistency of creating new behavior patterns over time. So we really want to encourage, one of the main takeaways and challenges we have for you guys is really come out of this, not just, oh, these were some nice ideas. We want to challenge you to actually implement practicing these 4 steps on a regular basis. In the book that will highlight that all this comes from, you can actually buy this book, and it actually has you sort of go through, and it's a workbook where you get to do more work on yourself and with your spouse on these concepts. All right, let's watch the video.
Well, welcome back. We're excited for what we learned the last session because it's a key in making that transition of being able to take off the old self and put on the new self. Really, the 4 steps are that methodology to regulate yourself emotionally and make that transition into that peace cycle from the pain cycle that we want you to get to really find the place in your marriage where you're able to do the best work for one another and also learn what God has for you individually. I want to emphasize again, particularly those of you that are working through this in a group at home, is that you need to realize that it's going to take a lot of practice, that you may need to go over this again this week and in the subsequent weeks and keep working at those 4 steps over and over again to get them into your lives. Nothing will be more powerful in ending that pain cycle in your life than working on those 4 steps and moving toward the peace cycle. There's a good question that came up in the last session that was really directed at, if it's so good, can I remind my spouse to do the 4 steps and get out of their pain cycle and into their peace cycle? Well, all I can tell you is that Sean and I have tried that many times in our relationships with our spouses, and it's a surefire way to spin you into the pain cycle, to make a small fight bigger. It does not work. What does work is for you to take responsibility for yourself. If you're seeing your spouse spin into that pain cycle, then it's almost a surefire sign that you're headed in there yourself. So if you do the 4 steps for yourself, you're going to change the nature of the pain cycle and move yourself to that peace cycle. And that's the best opportunity you have for helping your spouse get into the peace cycle, him or herself. So, just remember, it's not your job to correct your spouse. It's your job to have responsibility for yourself. Be responsible for yourself. Galatians 6 is the idea. You take responsibility for yourself, and you and your spouse will stay out of this pain cycle a lot. But not if you're able to do that. If you're able to stay out of that pain cycle, there's still some issues. And we need to talk about some of those issues. And so Sean's going to talk about some of that transition of what to do when you've successfully stayed out of this stuff, but there's still issues.
This is a great place to be because we've talked about our usness at the start and how important that is, but then we kind of got away with that and talked about the pain cycle and the hot buttons and what we bring in, and we shifted into the peace cycle and what that could look like and allow us to stay there by the transforming of our minds. Now we've got about 3 weeks left, 3 sessions left to just talk about what does it look like to grow our usness? What does it look like if we're starting to activate this peace cycle and more we're getting to move into that? What does it look like to stay there? Now, what can our usness really be? Can it be something different? Can we have a new marriage? And the answer is absolutely you can. You can have a new marriage. Now, we're going to talk about one of those processes, the one Terry just mentioned, the one that helps us when our issues aren't resolved just by being peaceful with each other. So we're getting along, we've listened, we've heard each other, but we still have something we've got to decide here. You're interested in this solution, I'm interested in this, they're opposite sides of the fence. What do we do now? That happens sometimes on teams. And the other week we talked to you guys, Elle and Stephanie, and you were very, you talked about openly, we got into a conflict and we had to work through our pain cycle and we got stuck there and Terry helps you to get into the peace cycle, sometimes that's all you need. Sometimes just operating out of your actions, your strengths here, you just, okay, I'm going to be more respectful. I'm going to listen a little more. I'm not going to hold a grudge. I'm not going to be defensive. And I'm going to be more respectful of him. And you just care about each other and that resolves the conflict. Just stopping to care about each other. But other times that's not enough. And when it's not, having this process in place will be very helpful for you. The first step in this process is really just understanding that for our usness sake, we've got to commit to staying together. We've got to commit to being on the same team. See, it seems pretty simple. We're married. We're obviously on the same team. But I mean, how many times have you turned on your spouse in a conflict and all of a sudden, instead of being together going the same direction, you were squared off and against each other? Any of you ever played tennis before? You tennis players, maybe doubles tennis? Christina and I tried doubles tennis for a while. And she's a very competitive person. I thought I was competitive until I met her and really learned what the definition is. She likes to win, loves to win, hates to lose, whatever it is that we're doing. Well, she's a very good tennis player, and I don't like it as much, but I would go out with her. Well, I was kind of slowing her down, and eventually it was kind of hurting our relationship. So I said, forget it, I'm not playing tennis with her anymore. Well, she kept playing and kept getting better, and eventually this tournament came to town, and it was a mixed doubles tennis tournament citywide. And Christina said, let's go play in this together. I said, no, we never do well when we play together in these things. I'm not sure it's a good idea. And I was starting to practice, marriage counseling practice. And she said, well, you know what it will do? It'll help you get your name out in the community. And all of a sudden, people will recognize you and you're going to meet a lot of folks. And I said, well, I do need to do that. I need some marketing and some branding help. And so I said, okay, one thing, one condition. And she said, what is it? And I said, it's just for fun. All right, we're just going to play for fun. And she said, okay, let's do it. We'll have a great time. And so we go out and play in the mixed doubles tennis tournament. And it starts out fantastic. I mean, we win the first match and we're doing great. We're high-fiving, encouraging each other. Second match, doing well. We're out in West Texas. It is hot now where we're playing. And it's just getting hotter and hotter as the day goes along. And Christina and I, we're playing okay, but eventually, in a tournament, you're playing other teams that have been winning as well. And we very quickly, the third or fourth match, get to the point where we're beyond my talent level, not hers, but mine. And I'm tired. I've played more tennis in this day than I have in my whole life probably. And so if you've ever played, they hit balls at the net and you're supposed to just volley them back. Well, I would miss the easy volleys and hit them in the net. Or they'd hit lobs and really short and you're supposed to put those away. And I would hit the lobs out, hit them long, or bang them off the back fence. And, Christina's, her competitiveness, her juices are just building back there. And eventually I hear her just making some nonverbal noises, kind of like, oh, or oh my goodness. And so I, kind of call a little timeout and I say, hey, honey, what's going on? What's happening with you? And she goes, you're what's happening. You're killing us. And I'm like, I've been waiting all day to play this card. So I said, hey, remember, this is just for fun. And she looks at me dead serious and says, let me tell you, Sean, when we were winning a while ago, that was fun. Now that you're choking in front of all these people, it's not fun anymore. And so I start getting mad. We jump right into our pain cycle. And, I'm feeling all of my hot buttons getting triggered. And so I start coping the way I do. I get passive aggressive. I just start missing shots intentionally because I'm going to show her. Well, she picks up on that pretty quickly and gets even more frustrated with me. We're verbally going at it at that point. And so it's a changeover. We're getting drummed in this match. And it's a changeover. Well, I go to get a drink of water. Well, she doesn't even come over there. She goes by herself back to the back. And I see my brother-in-law outside the fence, and there's hundreds of people watching the match all of a sudden. I'm like, why are so many people watching this tennis match? And I asked my brother-in-law, and he said, oh, man, the word is out that the marriage counselor and his wife are having a throwdown, and everybody is coming. So my marketing opportunity is just going down the drain. And I get out there, and if you've ever played, the setup is the server is back there, and the person at the net is looking across the net to see what's going to happen when the serve goes over. Well, she hits her serve, and she's not even caring about the game anymore. The ball hits me between the shoulder blades, and I mean, it felt like it came out my chest. It hurt so bad. And I hit the ball. It was just horrible. I mean, needless to say, we didn't win the tennis match. All right? Now, that's a long story to illustrate a point that I really want to stick with you, and that is just simply this. As soon as you turn on each other, you're going to lose. Your marriage is going to lose. Your relationship is going to lose. Because you were meant to be on the same team. Christina and I, as partners in that match, we're going to win together or lose together. The enemy was across the net. But we turned on each other. I made her the enemy. She made me the enemy. And the next thing you know, we were done. I mean, that happens in our marriages. We have an enemy that wants to see us lose, that wants to see us divided. And as soon as he divides us, he dusts his hands off to go mess with somebody else's marriage because his work is done. The first step in really working through problems is to just recognize that, hey, we're on the same team. Our usness is more important than my individual desires in this moment. I want our usness to win. And sometimes you just got to look at your spouse and say that, hey, let's remember we're on the same team in this. And sometimes Christina will do that with me now, and it just makes all the difference in the world because I go, oh, you're right. I'm trying to win this argument as opposed to trying to figure out how our usness can succeed in this. The second step, once you kind of realize, okay, we're on the same team, we're on the same page here, our usness has to win. The second step is to start thinking about some possible solutions. In the book, it talks about whether the couple wants to homeschool their child or send them to a public school. Lots of us have gotten into that debate as we're thinking about our kids. You guys said that y'all have even talked about that some too, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
So what happened was you found yourselves on opposite sides of the fence in terms of this decision. So step one is, okay, so we're on the same team. Our usness matters. It's important where he goes to school, and it's important that we maintain our usness in this. And then second is, it sounds like you guys started talking about solutions pretty quickly. Well, we could send him to a private school, but you had issues with that because, well, financially, are we going to be able to afford that? And that's what happens in this second step here is you start talking about, okay, what are the possible solutions out there? What are the ramifications of that? What does that do to my heart if I think about my son staying in this environment where he's being bullied? What does it do to me as I think as a provider for the family financially if we're going to be able to handle that? So you probably had some of those discussions. And then you did what is just probably more critical than anything, and that's the third step. You just got to pray together. Mm-hmm. Your usness, boy, needs prayer time. It needs, just in general, if you want to be successful as a team, you want to pray together. The research is overwhelming on how much secular research. People that probably wanted to disprove that prayer had anything to do with relationships have found over and over again that, boy, when couples pray together, it makes a huge difference in how well they stay together and how well they're able to apply different learnings and teachings in their relationships. So we all want to be praying together anyway. If it's you trying to change his heart, then it becomes a power struggle, which isn't any good. Again, you turn on each other. But when it's your usness and you say, okay, let's turn this over to the Lord and see what He has to say about this. So you prayed together. You prayed, it sounds like you prayed some, on your own too, and you were praying for him while he was praying over there. But make sure you pray together as well. The two of you. The good thing about praying together is when you do, you're united. You never see enemies praying together. Nobody ever stops in the middle of the battlefield and prays together. It's that praying together really unites you. I love watching sporting events now. Sometimes they do that. At the end, after they've duked it out for so long, some of the players get together in the middle of the field and they pray together and they just saying, hey, this is a sport, but at the end of the day, we're still brothers in this. You guys got united around that through prayer. And then the next thing that you want to do, the fourth step in the process is, okay, let's choose a solution that we both feel good about, and let's implement it. Let's see what happens. So it sounds like, what did you guys end up doing?
If we feel this peace about sending him to a private school, you're gonna have to wait, and he did, and it was just like confirmation after confirmation after confirmation that God wanted us to send him to a private school. And as I said, he made a way, and now my son is unlike, as far as I know, never before has he been so excited about going to school. He is just ecstatic about going to school.
That's great. That's great. So you guys chose the private school route. There was provision for that, and that was able to take place. That's what you want to do. You want to end up, make a list, all the options that are out there. What are the possible solutions? And I'm sure you probably did that mentally. You could do that on paper as well. We could do private school. We could do public school. We could move to another public school. We could homeschool. I mean, there's a myriad of options. So you want to put them all out there. You may end up choosing one that one or the other of you had from the very start, like you did in this case. But, put all the options out there. Do the research. Choose one, implement it. And then the last step in the process is make sure you set up a time to kind of reevaluate. You want to be willing to choose a different solution if you have to. Sounds like that's working out great, and you're not going to have to because your son's excited about going to school. I mean, you got a 15-year-old that's excited to go to school. You've done something right. Absolutely. But, it might be that he gets there and finances change. Some situation's different than you thought once he's in that school. Be okay with saying, hey, 6 months into this, let's get back together and just reevaluate and pray through it again and make sure we still feel good about the decision that we've made. You don't want to get tied to the decision. It's really about your usness. It's about, hey, let's together make a decision that feels honoring to both of us and is good for us as a couple, good for us as a team.
We're going to take, as you said, our usness, we're going to take it 1 year at a time. Resurface the issue next summer and see where we're at, but just continue to stay on the same page, Stephanie and I, along with our son Alec.
It's just out of curiosity, at the start of the process, when the bullying first started, and you said we got to get him to private school, and you said, how together did y'all feel in those first few months?
Oh, we weren't together at all. We weren't together. She wanted to baby our son and protect them and be that mother hen. And I was like, no, this is where the red badge of courage, steps up and says, I'm going to fight for my manhood. I'm saying I'm going to teach your son how to be a son, and he's going to fight back. And I said, you never start a fight, you always end a fight, and so we were at complete odds.
So your usness was suffering pretty bad at that
huge.
point. Yeah. How about now? Where are you as a team at this point? Where's your us?
Well, I felt it's just right there. And I thank Stephanie so much because instead of coming against me and saying, well, I think we need to do this, she wasn't arrogant about it or boastful. She just said, I'm just going to pray for him. And this is what she was doing. She was praying for me.
That's amazing. A 3-year process. Let me tell you why it's important to keep these boards up here. Because as y'all are talking, I'm hearing a different action that I haven't seen up here, and that's patient prayer. I think you need to add, Stephanie, patient prayer to your peace cycle, because it sounds like whenever you're activating in the truth and your usness is really important to you, you become this patient prayer that actually changes the way Elle looks at things. Mm-hmm. So these are living documents. Keep working on them. But way to use all right. Way to use the steps, you guys. That's fantastic. Absolutely. The usness is what we want to see win in this. And this is just one. We're going to talk about some more ways to do this. But maybe you have an issue. Maybe it's one that these guys are beyond this issue now. Maybe it's one you're right in the middle of at this moment. Where are we going to buy a new house? Or we're going to renovate the house we're in? Who knows? There could be a myriad of issues that you end up on opposite sides of the fence on. Work this process, and you'll be surprised at how much success you have and how good you feel together walking out of it.
It's amazing to me at how many little issues, big issues, medium-sized issues can spin you right into the pain cycle. So while you're doing this problem solving, you may realize, hey, we've slid into the pain cycle here, and you need to do the 4 steps to get back out. But when you get out of that pain cycle and into the peace cycle, just following those steps and really looking out for that usness, that sense of teamwork, of what we are together. Everybody has an opinion about what needs to be done, but it's always good to acknowledge that we're not God. And we don't really know what's best. We may think we know, but we really don't know. And it takes 2 people coming together. 2 are better than 1. Proverbs tells us that. And Amos tells us that if we're going to really walk together, we really need to be of one mind, one accord. So Amos 3:3, we need to really work at, when we solve these problems, at these issues that we end up on different sides of the fence, coming together and really working through them.
You just heard us talk about problem solving and how to nurture your usness by staying on the same team even when you're on opposite sides of the fence on some issue that you need a critical decision around. For your group time, you may need to go back to last week. There may be a few of you that still need to practice a little more the movement from the pain cycle to the peace cycle and those 4 steps of that process. But if everybody's in a good spot and you're ready for this problem solving, maybe somebody there in your group actually has an issue they've been trying to resolve, where to send the kids to school, where to live. This is a good chance to walk through those steps and have the rest of the group hold you accountable as you do it. Not only hold you accountable, encourage you as you put these steps into use to stay on the same team through this process. Again, your usness, it's worth it.
Okay. So I watched this video, I don't know, a couple weeks ago, and so I love the tennis story. I don't know if y'all thought that was hilarious, but I laughed the whole time because I can probably totally see myself doing that. But it made me think about a quick story I want to tell you guys in just a second. But one of the things he said that I didn't write down before, but I wrote down tonight, he said, as soon as you turn on each other, you lose. I thought, wow, okay. That is so critical to this whole thing, is this idea of being on a team, being partners, and really staying in that usness. There are 2 more videos that we're not going to watch, but the next video is really all about honoring strengths and how you really cultivate this usness and help each other to have good partnership. So a couple of things. So obviously getting in the peace cycle is the first step. You need to be peaceful within yourself. But the second thing is really focusing on the positives of your spouse, and we get to choose that. We get to choose whether or not we look for the negatives, the things we don't like about them, the things that irritate us, and obviously that's going to put us in a pain cycle pretty quickly. But we get to choose where we focus. And so if we're focusing on their strengths, their qualities, the things they bring to our relationship, we're always going to feel more peaceful when we're having to deal with conflict. The second thing is that we have to allow mutual influence. We have to allow ourselves to be influenced by our partner's perspectives. We want to let our partner speak into our life. So this may seem like a really silly issue, and Tammy's going to laugh when I tell this story, but it just occurred to me as he was talking about that. I'm like, oh my gosh, this was so me. So real quick, my husband loves technology. We have every gadget imaginable in our house. I could go days for that. But anyway, he decided that he wanted a bigger television, okay? I swear to you, our screen is that big in our. We had a normal size, huge television. It worked just fine. I knew how to work the remote. I knew how it all worked. It was great, but he wanted something different. So he ordered something different, which was way beyond what I thought we needed. And so I got a little salty about it, didn't I, Tammy? As a matter of fact, I kept saying, are we really doing this? Are we really doing that? Are you really going to hang that on the wall? Really? Do we need all that? And so finally, he did it. And I was so salty that I actually refused to watch television for about a week because I thought, I'm not going in there and watching that big TV that we don't need. But one of the things that I had to work on within myself was, can I let him influence me? Is this as big a deal as I want to make it? Is this something that I'm going to allow to sort of erode our usness? Am I going to really make the TV that issue? And so I really decided that, you know what? It's a television. It's huge, but it's okay. So I allowed him to mutually influence me in, what our technology stuff is, because that's his thing. That's the thing he's great at. When the TV doesn't work, I don't fix it. I bring him the remote and say, the TV doesn't work. What do I do, right? Because that's his strength. That's his niche. I would hope he would say that when it comes to relational things and emotional things with our kids, when they are having a hard time, that he's probably not going to go in there and try to be the person who handles that. He's going to look at me and say, you're up. Because that's what I do. That's what I'm good at. So being able to really influence each other and allow each other to speak into our lives and being approachable about that. Just acknowledging when we're in a tough spot and we need to get on the same team, get on the same page. And I'll say this too about mutual influence. It's not just anything you say, dear. It's not that kind of thing. It's really with a genuine heart that we're open to listening to what our partner has to say and trying to find some common ground in whatever the issue is. So I have a very large TV if anybody wants to come watch TV at my house. I will say this was his sweet reason. Once we got down to it, he said, I want our house to be the place where all the kids want to come because we have the biggest TV. And I was like, oh, well, that's a pretty good reason. It's still really too big. But you kind of get to the end and you think, oh, that was he had his heart in the right place. So yeah, come watch TV at my house. And the last thing I want to say is there are a couple of things that he talks about that will stifle our usness. Number one is this idea of you do your thing, I'll do mine. A lot of marriages kind of get to that place where we're not having a lot of time, where we're cultivating our usness. So he talks about things like we lose our usness and we lose that partnership. So we want to have individual interests, but we also don't want to get so far apart that we have no partnership. And then the last thing, and he kind of mentioned this in the video, polarizing our differences, really digging our heels in. I dug my heels in for a week over that television, but that really created more distance and more conflict. So being able to not polarize those differences, because that just creates that more tension. And really, Jesus is our model for this, the ultimate balance of grace and truth in those things. So that's kind of adding to what else you do besides just getting your peace cycle. And Lauren, what you going to tell us?
Okay, so we're getting close to the end. So the big question is, where do we go from here? Like, we have learned all of this information, and what do we do? And the huge thing, practice, practice, practice. It is like anything else in life. We got to practice it repeatedly for it to be able to come out naturally. And so I feel like we are hounding our kids constantly about, you got to go to practice. If you want to play well, you got to go to practice. That's where you learn, the skills of what you're trying to do. And we're the same way. The things, the way you develop a habit is by repeatedly doing your actions. And so these may feel really weird at first. It may be awkward. It may be uncomfortable. It may push you way out of your comfort zone. But that is why we practice, so that it becomes a more natural thing to just flow out in our daily life. And, a lot of people say knowledge is power. Now that you know this, now that you have this information, it can be helpful, but it's really applied knowledge. We can know what to do all day long. We know how to be healthy. We know how to eat right. We know we need to exercise, but do we do it? So now we know the 4 steps. We know what things kind of push us into our pain cycle, but are we actually applying the steps? Are we doing these things? Are we slowing down long enough in the process to even allow it to help us make a difference? So part of this is just keep practicing. It gets easier. It gets more normal. It gets a lot better the more that we practice. And so one thing that I encourage you to do is just really be thinking, over these past 6 weeks, if you've been here the whole time or if you watch it online, what are 1 or 2 really specific actions that you're going to choose to do in your own life? Is there something that just really stood out to you, or one thing that you want to be very intentional with and put that into practice? And you can either share that with your spouse, or you can just be working on that yourself. But one thing we talk about in counseling a lot, I am a baby step therapist. I want you to make progress even if it's this big. Because if it's this big, it's not that hard and it's not that overwhelming, and we'll keep moving. And so we don't have to change everything, but just one little thing. What can we commit to just a little bit at a time to help you move forward in the process? And part of this I thought was pretty interesting, just the statistics on change, that they said that 85% of people that put this into practice will stabilize their marriage over time just by doing the things differently. And that's pretty overwhelming. 15% of people will kind of fall back into old habits, because that's what humans do. We just kind of get stuck in that rut, and it's real easy to go back into that rut. But if you will repeatedly do these things, there is a really good chance that you will move in a very new and different direction heading forward. And the difference in the 85% and the 15% is just the amount of practice. So that's huge. And I just want you to think about where you want to end up, where you want your marriage to be. A really cool thing is that we get to pick our life. We get to choose what kind of marriage we have. We get to choose to adjust or change the things that aren't working, or the things that we don't love that are happening in our house. So just because we've done it this way for 10 and 20 and 30 and 40 years doesn't mean we have to continue to do it this way. And a lot of people try and pull the, I've been this way my whole life, can't change. And we don't buy that. We encourage very much that you can learn new things, you can do things differently, but it really comes down to choosing what you want to do. And so just being intentional on how you want to change and move forward. And I will just end, I've got a sign in my office that I love, and I hope everybody reads it when they come in. But it says, every day is an opportunity to change your life. So even if we screwed it up yesterday, even if we tried and fell right into that pain cycle yesterday, it's a new day. We have a new opportunity and a new choice each and every day, and that's pretty cool and exciting. So.
All right. So it's interesting. So we've taken this material that is essentially like designed to be part of like a 5-day intensive, and we've sort of just introduced it over the course of a few sessions here. And so let's skip ahead a couple of slides to the resources slide. So if you like the ideas, the concepts, but it's like, man, to really get this implanted at a deeper level, to really create change beyond kind of what we tend to do when we go to a Bible class, right? We hear some good ideas. But if you really want to ground this deeper, we've got a couple of additional resources beyond the scope of this class if you like the ideas. First of all is this book, 5 Days to a New Marriage. So all this material comes out of the book, and the book is basically like the workbook for what they do at their 5-day intensive down in Amarillo, Texas. And so this book takes all these concepts. Some of it would be a review of what we've seen in the DVD, but it really allows you to kind of personalize your own work through these concepts. And it also introduces some additional spiritual concepts. The other thing, of course, all of us have done the RT training, and so we integrate this into a lot of our work with clients, whether we're working on individual issues or when we're working with couples. So we just want you to know that we are, of course, available to help you kind of individualize and personalize some of these concepts further, whether it would be working on your individual peace cycle or working on your couple peace cycle. And Southwest members get 2 free sessions, so we encourage you to utilize that. Another thing that we are going to be launching, and in fact, we're going to watch a brief promo video in just a second. We're actually launching like an 8-hour full-day intensive to really feed into and support what we're already doing in our outpatient model. So we're not in a position where we can offer like a 5-day intensive like they have in Texas. But what we have found is that if we can really give people a lot of material and a lot of resources, it can just create a lot of positive momentum for working on it. So we're going to be launching that pretty quickly, and we're going to watch. You guys get to be the test audience for our new promo video here. And then on your survey, so thank you guys for passing out the surveys. What we're going to invite you to do is just give us some good feedback, both about this series as well as what would you like to see from here. So there's a few different options in terms of both different types of classes that you would be interested in, as well as just your impressions of this particular series. Then when you flip the page over, you're going to find there's some specific questions, like if you would be interested in participating in like an abbreviated version of that intensive. So what would equivalent be like a 4-hour intensive experience, because we feel like you've already gotten a pretty good exposure to the basic ideas. And this would be more of an individualized small group process with like 3 to 4 couples, as well as then doing some individual work. So you have the option to check yes or no whether you would have any interest in that. And then there's just a section there for you to just give your written feedback as well. But we just want to thank you guys for coming and participating in the class the last several weeks. It's been an honor to share these concepts. And we do hope and pray that it's been of benefit to you. So let's check out the promo video. Nothing in life can give us as much joy or as much pain as our relationships. When we experience safety and trust in a relationship, we're able to be our true self and experience the blessings of connection. However, when we feel disconnected or in conflict, it can create a number of negative emotions that make it hard for us to have peace. For nearly 3 decades, Better Life Counseling Center has provided quality, affordable Christian counseling in Northeast Arkansas. We're excited to announce a new day-long intensive program. Our Marriage Intensive is designed to help couples develop a better understanding of how negative thoughts, emotions, and behaviors can create patterns of conflict and distress, as well as a map for how to move towards healing and growth. Intensive counseling allows couples to go deeper in a shorter period of time. Better Life's Intensive is a day-long 8-hour program that includes education, group processing, and individual marriage counseling with one of our licensed team members. An on-site lunch will also be provided. Better Life approach provides a new perspective on how individuals see themselves and others as we operate out of either a pain cycle or a peace cycle. Attendees will learn strategies for self-regulation, ways of improving communication, and how to talk through conflict in less harmful ways. Couples who may benefit from our Marriage Intensive include those on the brink, for couples on their last chance or deciding whether or not to stay married. Disconnected and devitalized, for couples who need more connection. Repairing broken trust, for couples working through affairs or betrayals. We're too busy, for couples that want to maximize the impact of counseling in a shorter amount of time. We've tried counseling before, for couples who have not had success with previous attempts at traditional outpatient counseling. And let's start out right, for motivated couples who want to know how to create a successful relationship from the beginning. Couples who complete a Better Life Intensive will have a solid foundation to build on. They'll be given a workbook to continue processing and can continue ongoing outpatient counseling to maintain progress. We believe that couples will emerge from a Better Life Intensive with a greater hope for restoration and the knowledge and skills needed to build a better relationship. Our team is committed to helping you heal, grow, and develop a more intimate and connected relationship that will be a blessing to you and your family for many years to come. All right, guys. Well, we really appreciate, again, your time, your participation. Please fill out your survey. You guys can just leave those there on your table, and we'll close this out in prayer. Father God.